Number 50, Berkley Square, was once known as the most haunted house in London. Once home to George Canning, former Prime Minister, until his death in 1827. It was then leased by a Miss Curzon, who lived in it up until her death at the ripe old age of 90. Berkley Square's ghostly past may date back to the 1830s, when a young woman hurled herself to her death from an upstairs window. It was then occupied by a Mr. Myers, and it was with his tenancy that the house's sinister reputation apparently began. The story goes, the man was due to be married, and had furnished the house in a manner befitting his forthcoming and changing domestic circumstances. But, shortly before the wedding, his bride-to-be jilted him, and the heartbroken Myers became a recluse. He moved into a tiny room at the top of the building, where, alone with his memories, he lived day after day, never seeing a living soul, and only ever coming out at night to walk through the rooms by candlelight. The flickering flame of the candle cast a dull glow from the house's windows by night as he drifted from room to room. In 1873, the local council sued him for failing to pay his rates, but he failed to appear in court. The magistrate excused him on account of the fact the house in which he lived was known as the haunted house. The house was vacant for 2 years. Then, in 1880, a family known as Bentley moved in. Their daughter was engaged to an army officer called Kenfield. They were about to marry. There was a party at the house due to the forthcoming wedding, and there were lots of guests. During the evening, loud screams were heard from the daughter's room. Mr. Bentley, his wife and daughter, and Kenfield found a servant in a near catatonic state in the bedroom. She was paralyzed with fear and unable to speak. She died in hospital the next day, after muttering that she had seen something horrible in the room. Captain Kenfield insisted on staying in the room overnight, despite his fiancée's pleas. He set up a bell, promised that he would ring the bell if he saw anything. He also had a loaded pistol at his side. It was in the early hours of the morning when frantic sounds of bell ringing filled the house, followed by a loud gunshot. When the family got to the room, they found Kenfield lying on the floor, convulsing in terror, just as the servant had. His eyes were fixed on a corner of the room. The pistol was still clutched in his hand. There was a bullet hole in the corner of the room that he was staring at. His words were gibberish. Kenfield recovered, but he was never his old self again, and he was never able to speak of what he had saw in that room. Whatever the cause, the house was turned into a bookstore after World War II, and no paranormal activity has been reported by the owners. Another closely related story about Berkley Square concerns a curious, white-faced man with a gaping mouth, whose appearance is said to have terrified 2 fog-bound sailors who stumbled one night into their house, which had been standing empty at the time. During the night, they were first disturbed by the sound of muffled footsteps mounting the stairs. Something entered the room, and when one of the sailors, in an effort to escape the horror creeping toward them, fell through the window, his partner succeeded in escaping and was found in a state of collapse outside, by a passing policeman. His companion's dead body was found in the garden, but the policeman found no trace of the horrible thing that had terrified the two tough sailors. The sailor's partner's body was found impaled on the spiked railings.